I work at a small hotel with 96 rooms. We've been almost fully booked for 3 weeks straight. Most of our guests are coming from or going to a local retreat called the Art of Living, which is known for being a cult. My coworker warned me that the summer guests from this place would be really difficult, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Last night was the worst. These guests want special treatment like I'm their personal servant. They asked me to break the rules, clean their rooms like a maid, and do everything they want, no matter how unreasonable. Guest A was being difficult from the start. When I asked for a credit card for incidentals at check-in, he refused, saying he had already paid online through link unavailable. I explained it was our hotel policy, but he became rude and argumentative. Then he started making demands, not requests. He insisted that his linens and everything in his room be replaced every single day, even though he was staying for 10 days. I told him I wasn't sure if that was possible, but I would check with housekeeping, who usually changed linens every 3 days. He didn't seem to care about our policy and just expected me to make an exception for him. He came back to the front desk the next day, looking annoyed. He complained that his bedding hadn't been changed and that his room smelled awful, saying it was so terrible he didn't want to be in there anymore. I was surprised. How could his room smell that bad just 2 days into his stay? It seemed like a personal issue, not a hotel problem. I apologized and offered to leave a note for housekeeping to prioritize his room. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted more. He demanded that I call my manager at almost midnight to report the issue, wanting to ensure a deep cleaning of his room the next morning. I explained that I wouldn't be calling her at such a late hour, but I would make sure she was informed. His friend, standing beside him, wouldn't stop criticizing me, saying it was unacceptable and that we needed better communication. He asked if they could switch rooms and I said no. Then he asked if I could personally come to clean their room. It was getting ridiculous. I politely told them I couldn't clean their room myself and started focusing on the computer, but they refused to leave the desk, complaining loudly about the situation and expecting a higher level of service. I thought to myself, this is a comfort suites, not a luxury resort. I stayed silent, and the guest stood there, glaring at me for about 10 minutes. Finally, he yelled, "We are going to request toilet paper and linens." Now just then, our night auditor arrived and offered to fetch the items, sensing my frustration. While they were away, they asked again if they could switch rooms or receive some compensation for the inconvenience. I again said no to their requests. The night auditor returned with the toilet paper and linens, but they became angry because he hadn't brought new towels. The problem was, they hadn't even asked for towels. The night auditor went back to get towels, and then the guest also demanded hand towels. After they finally got everything they needed, the smaller guy started pointing at me and yelling in a different language, clearly furious. I was taken aback, looking confused, and they stormed off. Just as things were calming down, I went upstairs to refresh the coffee. Earlier, one of the meditation retreat guests had complained that the coffee was cold, even though I had brewed it just an hour before. As I was working, I heard a frantic woman screaming at the top of her lungs, "Hello, hello, where is help? Where is the help?" Hello, her voice was echoing through the hallway, and I couldn't help but wonder what was wrong now. I turned around to see a woman rushing towards me, grabbing my shoulder and saying, "We need your help at the desk, young lady." Immediately just then, the coffee machine started overflowing. I told her I'd be right there, but I needed to stop the coffee first. But she insisted, "No, this is an emergency." I felt a surge of stress and quickly turned off the coffee, thinking I'd deal with the mess later. I rushed down to the desk with her, where her entire family was waiting. They had a very strong, unusual odor about them. I asked, "How can I help you all?" The woman replied, "Our key cards are missing." I thought to myself, this is a problem, since we only have enough key cards for the remaining guests who haven't checked in yet. I offered to make her one key card, but she scoffed at me. I went ahead and made the key card anyway. Then, she started speaking to her family in another language and showed one of them the room number on her keycard packet, which surprisingly had 9 cards in it. I'd never been rude to a guest before, but I looked her straight in the eye and said, "So, you lost your cards, but you have multiple cards right there." She became really embarrassed, muttered, "We must go to her family," and they all quickly got into the elevator and left. Guest C arrived towards the end of my shift to check in. I greeted her warmly, but she unexpectedly shushed me and made a zipping motion across her lips. I thought maybe she was mute or had a speech disability, so I smiled and waited patiently as she typed on her phone. She then turned the screen to me, which displayed a message: "I am on a silent meditation retreat. I cannot speak. Do not speak to me," followed by a prayer emoji and a blessed emoji. Oh joy, another guest from the meditation retreat, and one who couldn't speak at that. I started communicating with guest C through sticky notes, asking for a card for incidentals and an ID. But then she dropped a bombshell. She typed back, "Just kidding. You can speak to me. I don't have a card. I only have Apple Pay and I don't know where my ID is." I was stunned. What did she mean? I explained that I couldn't check her in without a card and ID, as it's our policy. She became angry and started typing away on her phone, claiming she had already paid. I reiterated the importance of incidentals multiple times, getting frustrated. I texted my manager for guidance, and she advised me to just check her in, saying she would handle the situation later. I tried to explain the situation to guest C, but she shushed me again. I was taken aback and decided not to engage with her further. Instead, I simply handed her the key card and smiled, choosing to maintain a professional demeanor despite the bizarre interaction. I was done trying to communicate with her. Guest D was the next challenge. Still reeling from the previous encounters, I faced a new guest who looked visibly annoyed. I asked how I could assist her, and she requested that I unlock the milk and juice machine upstairs so she could get a cold glass of milk. I explained that I wasn't authorized to do so, but she became upset, arguing that she had paid for the hotel room with the expectation of having unrestricted access to milk. Her reasoning seemed unreasonable, and I wondered what else might unfold. I offered an alternative, explaining that the gift shop area had milk in the fridge, but guest D became even more agitated. She refused to buy the Fairlife milk, claiming it contained preservatives that would harm her body and, remarkably, make Buddha angry. She said this verbatim, word for word. I apologized again, trying to placate her, and reminded her that breakfast would start at 6:30. She glared at the fridge, shot a disapproving look at the Fairlife milk, and then stormed off towards the elevator, leaving me bewildered by her extreme reaction. I have even more stories about these guests, but I'm too drained to share them now. I'm ready to go back to bed. With a physics lab report to tackle and another shift at work coming up soon, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Dealing with these demanding and eccentric guests has taken a toll on me. It's exhausting, both mentally and emotionally. Time for some rest and a fresh start.